What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel. We continue with our 2025 college football schedule preview and very early projected record series. The Arkansas Razorbacks are up next. Before we look ahead to 2025, let's take a look back at what Arkansas did in 2024. Here are my projections and predictions last year for Arkansas. My projection for this team was at 6-6, and then my prediction for them was a little bit lower at 4-8. So it was not that I was high on Arkansas, it was just because of the schedule and everything. The schedule that they had last year in 2024 was probably one of the second toughest schedules mainly in the country, and definitely probably the toughest schedule, maybe the second toughest schedule in the SEC besides Florida as well. But yeah, they were at 6-6 last year, so they definitely proved me wrong there, going 6-6. But again, it was just really not about the record; it was more about the schedule. But they definitely had a better season compared to where they were in 2023. But if you count their bowl game at the end of the season, they went 7-6 overall. So a pretty solid season for Arkansas last year. You kind of expect them to be right there around 6, 7, 8 wins. It seems like this is one of the more consistent programs now in recent years now under Sam Pittman. You look at the schedule from last year, and I talked about it. It was a tough schedule in 2024. First off, you look at who they played in the non-conference. They played University of Arkansas Pine Bluff, Oklahoma State on the road out of the Big 12, and then UAB and Louisiana Tech. So not a tough non-conference schedule, but they played Oklahoma State, of course, lost that game in overtime by 7 points, and I feel like Arkansas should have won this game, basically, because the Cowboys were not really good as we thought they were going to be. I picked Oklahoma State to win the Big 12 all last year, but they didn't do that, so this was definitely a tough loss here for Arkansas. If they would have not lost to Oklahoma State, this team probably would have been at 7-5, or maybe they could have still gone like 6-6, depending on what happens in the rest of their SEC games. But you look at their SEC schedule. First off, you look at who they played at home last year. They played Tennessee, LSU, Ole Miss, and Texas, so 4 home games last year. They beat Tennessee. That was a big win there, but they lost to LSU, Ole Miss, and Texas. So, yeah, they struggled at home last year in the SEC, but then you look at the road schedule. They played Auburn, Mississippi State, and Missouri, so that was their true road games. They had that one neutral site game against Texas A&M. Basically, it's going to change, obviously, because both teams are now switching to be on campuses instead of being in Arlington. So, again, looking at the schedule last year, it was a very tough schedule here for Arkansas for 2024. And obviously having Oklahoma State in the non-conference ended up making it a little bit tougher as well. Does it get better for Arkansas in 2025? Well, no, it doesn't. This is another tough schedule for them. Here is that schedule in 2025. Before we go game by game, though, let's take a look at who Arkansas's non-conference opponents will be this year. So this is their non-conference schedule. They will play Alabama A&M, Arkansas State on the road at Memphis, and then Notre Dame at home. So a couple of cupcakes there with Alabama A&M and Arkansas State. I know Arkansas State is a group of 5 team, but they haven't been really good recently. And then you got Memphis. Memphis was a really good group of 5 team last year, so this game is on the road. Arkansas definitely should overall still be the better team, but this is kind of, interesting. You play them on the road this year. That's kind of like a trap non-conference game, to be honest. And you don't play them in the first 3 weeks of the season. You don't play these, you play Alabama A&M and Arkansas State in the first 2 weeks, but you don't play Memphis in those first 3 weeks of the season. So yeah, this might be a trap game here for Arkansas. And again, Memphis, is a team that pulled off an upset against a Power 4 team in Florida State. Of course, the Seminoles were not really good last year. They were terrible. But Arkansas is kind of different. Arkansas's got talent, maybe a little bit more talent than Florida State from last year. But yeah, Memphis, that's kind of a trap game. And then you got Notre Dame, obviously, the runner-ups from last year's national championship. The good news for the Razorbacks, it's in Fayetteville, so it's a home game here for the Razorbacks. It does give them a chance to probably pull off the upset. So that's your non-conference schedule. Let's now move on to their home schedule in the SEC. They will play Texas A&M, Auburn, Mississippi State, and Missouri, all at home this year in the SEC, and I just talked about it. They are switching things up for the Texas A&M and Arkansas rivalry to like campus games now instead of like in Arlington. I am definitely personally a big fan of this. I can't wait to see how these matchups go when they play on their campuses. I mean, Auburn, Mississippi State, and Missouri, and all these games at home for Arkansas are very winnable games. You know, they beat Auburn last year in Jordan-Hare. This time they play them at home. Mississippi State might be the easiest home game, and then you got Missouri. Obviously, that's a rivalry game that really can go either way. Missouri has dominated. They've dominated a couple years ago, but last year was a pretty close game, so we'll see if Arkansas can get revenge on the Tigers of Missouri. So that's your home schedule. Let's now move on to the away schedule. They will play on the road at Ole Miss, at Tennessee, at LSU, and at Texas. Very brutal road schedule here for Arkansas. I mean, Ole Miss, Tennessee, LSU, and Texas, all four very tough places to play. You know, Ole Miss game last year was not really close. They beat Tennessee last season in Fayetteville, but this time they're playing on the road in Knoxville. That's a very tough place to play at Neyland Stadium. And then obviously LSU and Texas. Those are very tough places to play as well. So Arkansas might be underdogs in all four of these games. You never know. I mean, this is a very tough road schedule here in the SEC for the Razorbacks. Let's go back to the full schedule now and go full game by game now and just see how tough this schedule is. Again, they start things off with Alabama A&M on August 30th. Then they play Arkansas State on September 6th. Then they go on the road to play Ole Miss on September the 13th to open up SEC play. And then how about this? They'll be back on the road to play Memphis, one of their other non-conference games, on September 20th. So you got back-to-back road games there with Ole Miss and Memphis in the SEC and then in the non-conference, which is very interesting. Then you come back at home the next week to play Notre Dame on September 27th. And then you get a bye week here before playing Tennessee on the road on October the 11th. And then it's back at home for Texas A&M on October 18th. And then also at home against Auburn on October 25th. And then also on the road against at home against Mississippi State on November 1st. So looking at that stretch there from October 18th to November 1st, they will play 3 home games in a row in the SEC. Texas A&M, Auburn, and Mississippi State in 3 weeks in a row. So yeah, that's very interesting there. And then they get another bye week before playing LSU on the road on November 15th, and then it's on the road at Texas on November 22nd. So back-to-back road games there against LSU and Texas. That is brutal right there. That is a very tough back-to-back road schedule there for Arkansas. And then they close things out with Missouri on November 29th in rivalry weekend at home. So that's your schedule for Arkansas in 2025. Another tough schedule here for the Razorbacks. Again, it doesn't really get easier for them every year, but can they still make a bowl game? That'll be the big question mark here. Let's not find out and get to the projection here for 2025. This is the scale I'll be using here for their official projection. Basically, if it's a 1% game in the red, that's pretty much counted as an automatic loss. 20% games in the orange, those are games where Arkansas will be about a double-digit underdog. 40% games in the yellow, they'll be a clear underdog by 6 or 7 points. And then 50-50 games obviously will stay in the white, games that really can go either way. 60% games in the purple, those are games where Arkansas will be favored by about a touchdown, like 6 or 7 points. And then your 80% games in the blue, they'll be favored by double digits in that percentage. And then also the 99% games in the green, that is pretty much your automatic win. So we'll start with those easy wins here for Arkansas. I think you got a couple of them, and they both come in the non-conference, Alabama A&M and Arkansas State. Perhaps your 2 easiest games in the non-conference for 2025, and also your easiest games on this schedule. Yeah, I think these 2 games, Arkansas will be favored in both of them by either like 17 plus or 20 plus points, and I think they're definitely over that 95 to 99% range as well. So yeah, it would definitely be a big shock if Arkansas either, probably loses to one of these 2 teams, but I just do not see that happening. So I think you can count those as automatic wins here for Arkansas. And then I got one game here in the blue, which is also counted as a win, but not like a really automatic win, just like the green games are, but still a win either way in this projection, and that's going to be Mississippi State. I think Arkansas will be favored by double digits here against the Bulldogs. Because it's at home, that's the reason why it fell in the blue instead of the purple. If it was on the road, it would definitely be in the purple here for Arkansas. So I'm going to put this game in the blue for right now, and obviously Mississippi State, we'll see if they can, get a little bit better this year in 2025. And then I actually got one game in the purple, and that's going to be the Memphis game here on September 20th. I'm going to put this game in the purple. I think Arkansas will still be favored by 6 or 7 points, but again, I think it's a trap game, to be honest. You're playing Memphis the next weekend after probably a tough game against Ole Miss. You're probably all beat up here. It wouldn't shock me if Arkansas probably came out a little bit flat, and also they could be looking ahead to that Notre Dame game the next weekend in order to kind of pull off the upset. So they're probably studying Notre Dame and probably overlooking Memphis. Again, I would not be shocked if Arkansas did go down in this game, but still, I think the Razorbacks are definitely the better team. They'll be probably favored by 6 or 7 points. So I think they'll be favored by 6 or 7 points, so by about a touchdown, somewhere in that range. And then we go to the games where I think Arkansas is going to be an underdog in. I don't have any games in the red, but I do have a couple of games in the orange. I think you could put Ole Miss and Texas both here in the orange. So I think the Razorbacks will be double-digit underdogs against both of these teams. Last year, they weren't really competitive against them. You know, Ole Miss, obviously. On the road, that's really a tough place to play, and then obviously Texas, that's even a more tougher place to play. That's pretty much the reason why both of these games are in the orange, and also the reason why is because they weren't competitive against these two teams last year. So those are your two games where I think Arkansas will be double-digit underdogs by 10 to 14 points, somewhere in that point range, and then I got 3 games here in the yellow. I think these 3 games, they'll be clear underdogs in them by 6 or 7 points, Notre Dame, Tennessee, and LSU. So they beat Tennessee last year, obviously. That's the reason why it turns into a yellow game instead of like a orange game. And then also on the other side for Tennessee, instead of being like a blue game, it is a purple game for them. So Tennessee, obviously, they're playing at home. That's another reason why it ends up being the yellow here for Arkansas. But again, I'm going to give them credit for beating them last year. That's the reason why it's in the yellow. Obviously, Notre Dame, because it's at home, that does give them a chance here to pull off a big upset somehow. And then LSU and Death Valley, I know that game is on the road. It definitely should be in the, in the blue, but I think it's definitely a game that really can come either way. It could be close to a 50-50 game because of the rivalry, but I think LSU is a little bit more talented. Let's just put it that way. That's the reason why it's in the yellow, because LSU is a lot more talented than Arkansas is. So, yeah, these 3 games, I think Arkansas will be clear underdogs in all 3 of them by 6 or 7 points. And then that leaves you with 3 50-50 games. Texas A&M, Auburn, and Missouri. These are all games that really can go either way. Texas A&M, obviously, just because it's a home game, that's the reason why it is a white game. And then Auburn, I know I could put this game in the purple somehow, but I'm going to go with it and put it as a 50-50 game for right now. I think Auburn could probably have a better season compared to where they were from last year. I know they're coming off a disappointing season. And then obviously Missouri, just because it's at home for Arkansas, that's the reason why it turns into a 50-50 game as well. So yeah, these 3 games can really go either way. So what does the projection come out to be here for Arkansas for 2025 based on how tough this schedule is? Well, when you average everything out, you count the green games as wins, the 1 blue game as a win as well, then you average out that 1 purple game at 60%, average out the 2 games, or actually not average out, but you count the orange games as losses, and then you average out these 3 yellow games at 40%, average out the 3 50-50 games at 50%, and let's say they kind of, split these 50-50 games. Let's say they just win 1 50-50 game, they lose 2, and then they probably win 1 50-50 game, and then they probably, pull off a big upset somewhere in those yellow games. That's going to give you a total 6 wins, including those other games that are counted as wins, and then you're going to be favored against Memphis. That's going to give you 6 wins. So that's what the projected record is for Arkansas. It's at 6-6 here for 2025. I think that's a pretty fair projection because of how tough this schedule is. That's pretty much the reason why the projection is at 6-6. Again, this is a very tough schedule. The best case, I would say, is 7-5. And then worst case, probably not going to a bowl game at 5-7. Now, 5-7, I don't think would be a disappointment just because of how tough this schedule is. But 4-8 or worse definitely is a disappointing year for the Razorbacks, in my opinion. So again, a very tough schedule here for Arkansas. We'll see if they can make it to a bowl game this year. As of right now, my projection is telling me that they'll barely make it to a bowl game at 6-6. Do you guys agree or disagree? Let me know your thoughts about Arkansas down in the comments below. Thanks for watching this video, and stay tuned for more sports content videos on my Lucas Ross Sports YouTube channel.